Kenya Airways at low altitude. National carrier posts a 16.1 billion shillings loss in the first half of 2026, driven by soaring fuel prices.
I'm a victim of circumstances. I've not killed anybody and I've done nothing.
Drama in court. Rose Mbithe Mulwa and son Chris Mulwa protest what they term as malicious prosecution by the state. And we've got a packed show for you tonight, starting off with Power Talk. And on the show this week, we're speaking with SBM Bank CEO Bhatesh Shah. We'll be speaking about the company's performance, how it's been able to turn around to profit-making since 2025, and also the role it hopes to play in unlocking growth for the SME sector. We'll be speaking about that in a moment for you to be able to understand SBM Bank's journey in the country and also what's happening in Mauritius, where SBM Group initially comes from, and indeed what sort of lessons there are to learn as we move towards a more industrialized nation. Bhatesh Shah will be live here on Power Talk in just a moment. But also tonight on The Explainer, it's all about business and the economy, because we shall also be speaking with the chairman of the board of Kenya Airways. We'll be talking about their profits, or not, lack thereof, for their financial report for the first half of 2026, not looking good, widening the losses further to 16.1 billion shillings. How do they manage, or what plan do they have to navigate the headwinds? Kiprono Kitonyi, who's the chair of Kenya Airways, will be speaking about those numbers and explaining them to us. All of that here on The Explainer, which starts right now.
Live from Citizen TV, this is The Explainer with Yvonne Okwara.
Tonight on The Explainer, we want to begin the bulletin in neighboring Tanzania, where President Samia Suluhu has accepted the resignation of the country's Vice President Emmanuel Nchimbi this evening. Tanzania's Chief Secretary Moses Kusiluka announced in a statement this evening that the process of replacing Nchimbi has started. Vice President Emmanuel Nchimbi resigned from office and announced his retirement from politics earlier today. In a letter announcing his decision, Nchimbi said he had promised President Samia Suluhu Hassan that they would work together until she chose to appoint a new vice president. His resignation, which comes less than a year after he was sworn into office, is likely to raise questions about his relationship with President Suluhu Hassan, particularly given his recent public comments on the need for constitutional reforms. Here's Citizen TV's Ben Kirui with that report.
Mimi Emmanuel John Nchimbi naapa kwamba nitakuwa mwaminifu kwa Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania.
He took oath of office as the country's second vice president since President Samia Suluhu Hassan assumed the presidency of the United Republic of Tanzania. But less than a year since his swearing in, Emmanuel John Nchimbi has tendered his resignation to President Samia Suluhu. In a letter published on his personal social media accounts, Nchimbi said he had decided to step down to give President Samia an opportunity to appoint a new vice president. He said he had previously assured the president that he would relinquish the position if she so desired to make changes to her vice president. Reports of Nchimbi's impending resignation are circulated for several weeks as tensions appear to be rising within the ruling Chama cha Mapinduzi CCM party. In June, on the floor of the August House during a debate on the national budget, Tungun Member of Parliament Simai Mohamed Said abruptly digressed and launched a verbal attack against an individual he described as a traitor within the government. The remarks were widely seen as targeting the vice president.
Binadamu ni wale wale. Lakini niwaambie ndugu zangu, hawa wale wale leo nambatiza mmoja aliyekuwa ndani ya serikali, basi ni Yuda.
Nchimbi's resignation comes after he had publicly advocated for constitutional reforms in Tanzania in July.
Wakisema una jambo la kuwaambia Watanzania moja tu, unapewa nafasi ya mwisho, sema moja, nitasema pambaneni mpate katiba mpya. Pambaneni mpate katiba ambayo ina makubaliano ya wadau wote. Katiba yenye mwafaka katika taifa. Katiba itakayotupeleka mbele miaka 50 inayokuja.
According to his letter to President Samia, Nchimbi will remain in office until September 4th, when his resignation is expected to take effect. Ben Kirui, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
Any political leader linked to goons and other forms of political violence risks being disqualified from contesting in the 2027 general election. While unveiling the violence-free election roadmap, the IEBC says it will be keen on ensuring those who flout the election laws by polarizing the country will not be on the ballot. And as Citizen TV's political affairs reporter Stephen Leto now tells us, the National Police Service says it will increase surveillance on notorious politicians.
Politicians who thrive in divisive politics and propagating hate have been put on notice during the unveiling of the National Cohesion and Integration Commission's roadmap to violence-free 2027 general election. The IEBC, through its chair Erastus Ethekon, warned politicians that they will not clear hate mongers and those found to be linked to goons to contest.
We have something called Electoral Code of Conduct under the Elections Act and under Article 84 of the Constitution. That is the tool that we'll be using to hold politicians accountable.
In a show of support, the National Police Service told the NCIC that it will recommend to the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission individuals it considers unfit to run for elective office based on their track records.
The National Police Service will ensure the surveillance, detection, investigation, arrests, prevention of crime, and instance of political instigated violence.
The National Cohesion and Integration Commission is deeply concerned by the growing manifestations of political intolerance, hate speech, ethnic contempt, disinformation, and other forms of divisive rhetoric in our public discourse.
Police affirm that they will use their surveillance and security mandate to identify individuals whose conduct could pose a threat to peaceful elections. Police further vowed to step up surveillance, crime prevention, and make arrests targeting individuals involved in politically instigated violence.
The National Police Service arrested 27 hardcore criminals who were targeting the rallies in Homa Bay. They are now in police cells waiting to be charged.
Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi, who graced the event, warned against political intolerance, hate speech, ethnic contempt, disinformation, and divisive rhetoric, saying careless statements by leaders and influential individuals could deepen divisions.
Do not allow politics to persuade you that another Kenyan is your enemy simply because he or she supports a different candidate. An election will come and go. Campaign posters will eventually come down.
The NCIC told the gathering that efforts to prevent electoral violence begin before the election day and called on the security agencies to map out hotspots, respond to potential sources of conflict. Stephen Leto, Citizen TV.
Nairobi Senator Edwin Sifuna has told off President William Ruto over his claims that Linda Mwananchi is being funded by retired President Uhuru Kenyatta. Sifuna, who engaged young aspirants in Nairobi, asked President Ruto to provide evidence that the opposition is being funded by his predecessor, insisting the Kenya Kwanza administration is in panic due to the opposition's influence across the country. The Linda Mwananchi principal also dismissed claims that they lacked an agenda, saying their main agenda is to make President Ruto a one-term president. Gatete Njoroge reports.
with sustained attacks from President William Ruto on opposition over their close ties with his predecessor Uhuru Kenyatta. Nairobi Senator and Linda Mwananchi principal Edwin Sifuna has come out to denounce the allegations that the opposition is receiving funds from the retired head of state to send Ruto home.
Saila anaulizwa, Mheshimiwa Rais, una ushahidi gani kwamba hawa watu wa Linda Mwananchi wanapewa pesa na Mheshimiwa Uhuru Kenyatta? Anasema hata yeye alisoma kwa gazeti. Shenzi sana wewe mtu. Unatuambia gazeti na at the very same time ile headline ya gazeti ndio anachukia kabisa. Wakati ile headline ya gazeti ilituambia SHA imepoteza bilioni 10. Si alisema ni ukora?
Describing President Ruto as a beneficiary of slogans during his 2022 campaigns, Sifuna told off the head of state for portraying the opposition as a team that lacks agenda, reminding him that their main agenda is to get him out of State House before reshaping the nation's destiny.
When we speak about the software issues of this country, a return to constitutionalism, a return to the rule of law, a return to equality, Kenyans have understood. We just have one person with a PhD, but he's slow. Hajashika, bado anakaa kituuliza, agenda yenu ni gani?
The Nairobi senator hit out at Kenya Kwanza administration for running a government of tokenism, something he says if elected president, he will resolve by ensuring state institutions serve ordinary Kenyans.
Ati barua za TSC zinachukuliwa, badala wafuate mfumo wa TSC, barua zinauzwa. Wanza wanachukua wanapea wabunge, alafu wanauzia watu. Kwenu lazima muuze hata mpaka shamba ndio mpate hiyo 400,000 mnataka. When I talk about meritocracy, wa Kenya wamenielewa, imebaki mmoja tu na PhD ambaye ni mslow. Haelewi.
Sifuna, who assured the young aspirants of his support ahead of the 2027 general election, urged them to focus on selling their agenda to the people and shun politics of using cash to entice voters. Gatete Njoroge, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
Now, the Political Parties and Disputes Tribunal has allowed Edwin Sifuna's led Linda Mwananchi to reserve the wordings, the Mwananchi Party, pending the hearing and determination of its appeal. The court has also allowed the reservation and registration of the Liberty National Democratic Alliance, Linda, pending the hearing and determination of the case that will resume on the 14th of September this year. And as Seth Olale reports, both factions earlier today maintained the rightful ownership and identity of the Linda brand during separate functions held in Nairobi County.
Senator Edwin Sifuna's Linda Mwananchi has been allowed by the Political Parties and Disputes Tribunal to reserve and register the Mwananchi Party pending the hearing and determination of its appeal. While issuing preliminary orders through a virtual proceeding, the Political Parties and Disputes Tribunal also barred, prohibited and restrained the Registrar of Political Parties from considering, processing, reserving or registering the name Linda Mwananchi or any similar variation for any other person or entity pending the determination of the appeal. Speaking while delivering a keynote address on youth aspirants' involvement in politics at the Ufungamano House in Nairobi, Linda Mwananchi principal Edwin Sifuna reiterated that the faction is defending its brand and identity.
What we are fighting for is not a party. We have parties. We are fighting for our brand, our name.
Similarly, the Liberty National Democratic Alliance, Linda, reservation and registration has been allowed by the Political Parties and Disputes Tribunal to continue pending the hearing and determination of the appeal.
Recognized by the law of the land and recognized by the office of the office of the Registrar of Political Parties.
The Registrar of Political Parties haven't confirmed that our client complied with every other thing.
We are students of Raila Odinga. Raila Odinga had plan A, B, C, D.
both parties entered into a consent allowing the reservation and registration of the Liberty National Democratic Alliance Linda and the Mwananchi Party to continue pending the hearing and determination of the appeal scheduled to be heard on September 14th, 2026 at 2:30 p.m. Even as the Edwin Sifuna-led Linda Mwananchi faction awaits the outcome of the political parties' disputes tribunal over the registration row, it will be heading this weekend to Meru County to popularize its brand in the Mount Kenya region. Seth Olale, Citizen TV at the Ufungamano House, Nairobi County.
President William Ruto has accused opposition leaders of lacking clear policies and a development agenda and only focusing on attacking the government rather than offering solutions. The president was in Narok County today, where he also announced a 500 shilling reduction in the price of fertilizer, pledging also to cut the cost of maize seed by 50%. Melita Olatenges reports.
President William Ruto toured Narok County, where he held series of political rallies in Enengetia, Ololulunga, Olposimoru and other areas. The president used the rallies to lash out at his opponents, who he accused of offering no clear direction to Kenyans, but empty political rhetoric with no viable development agenda.
Wale wengine wote ambao wanajaribu hapo ni watu bure. Wale watu mpango hawana. Agenda hawana, maono hawana, sera hawana, agenda hata akili.
President Ruto also rallied support for the broad-based government, saying ODM and UDA supporters will for the first time in Narok County be pulling in the same direction.
Mnajua hapa Narok tulikuwa tunashindana na Raila Odinga, si namna hiyo? Kura nusu alikuwa anachukua, kura nusu nilikuwa nachukua, si namna hiyo? Lakini hii 2027 nyinyi mko na habari ya kwamba tumeunganisha ODM na UDA na sasa ni broad based. Sasa kura ya Narok itakuwaje?
To offer relief to farmers who recorded poor returns this season, the president announced that the price of fertilizer will be reduced by 500 Kenya shillings, while the cost of maize seed will be cut by 50%.
Ile mbolea mlinunua 2,500 mwaka huu, kuanzia mwezi ujao nimepunguza tena ikuje 2,000 peke yake. Pia nimesema ile mbegu ya kuzalisha mahindi, kwa sababu ndio chakula ya muhimu Kenya, mbegu kwa mwaka huu na mwaka ujao tutapunguza by 50%, bei yake ishuke chini.
President Ruto officially opened the modern Ololulunga market and launched the construction of a 20-kilometer road linking Ololulunga to Ewasongiro.
Leo ni siku ya historia ambayo tumeona barabara ambayo umeunda. Your Excellency, sio hii tu ndio umefanya kazi mingi, kama vile umeambiwa hiyo uwanja karibu iishe.
The president further pledged that roads covering a total of 300 kilometers would be completed across Narok. Melita Oletenges, Citizen TV.
And DCP party leader Rigathi Gachagua has rejected the call for zoning of political strongholds within the united opposition, adding that internal competition within the opposition camp will lead to a higher voter turnout in the presidential election. Gachagua, who received Kamkunji MP Yusuf Hassan, who ditched Jubilee Party for DCP today, however, reiterated that the united opposition will rally behind a single presidential candidate to face President William Ruto at the ballot. Emmanuel Tor reports.
Ndio huyo mheshimiwa anaingia kwa chama ya DCP.
Kamkunji Member of Parliament Yusuf Hassan is the latest signing in a continuing streak of defections to the DCP party.
Karibu sana kwa chama ya DCP. Karibu sana.
The long-serving legislator who ditched retired President Uhuru Kenyatta's Jubilee Party, showering praise on his new political home.
DCP ni chama ambacho inataka uzuri, ni chama ambacho inataka mema ya Wakenya, ni chama ambacho inataka mabadiliko halisi.
Ametoka Jubilee, ameingia DCP.
Gachagua also sustained his onslaught on Jubilee as a number of Nairobi Jubilee officials exchanged red for green. Gachagua using the opportunity to voice his rejection of zoning within the opposition.
Na mimi napenda vyama vyote tushindane kwa sababu itasaidia kwa voter turnout ya presidential vote. Mimi nataka niseme hatutaki mambo ya zoning. Kila chama iweke candidate pahali inasikia iko na umaarufu.
The DCP leader's remarks come days after a section of disgruntled party leaders from the Mount Kenya region called for zoning, complaining of bullying by Gachagua.
DCP ndio itavuma Nairobi. And the competition in Nairobi is between DCP, Wiper and Leader. Luckily, we are on the same side, all of us. Kwa hivyo tutakubaliana hapa na pale.
The former deputy president also led his troops in slamming President William Ruto and his trip of the South Rift County of Narok.
Mimi nimetoka hapo Friday, Kasongo hapo kesho. I was there on Friday, he is there tomorrow. Kwa hivyo hii wakanaji wajue hiyo ndio dawa. Huyu Kasongo hawezi fanyia watu kazi ambayo hawapingi Kwa hivyo nyinyi wakanaji ni mkitaka maendeleo kwa sababu hamuna chochote. Muingie kwa DCP.
Mimi ningependa kutangazia William Ruto kwamba vile wewe unajipanga, pia sisi tunajipanga kulinda kura ya kukutoa na mpaka uende nyumbani.
Mahali tunakubaliana tuweke candidate moja ni kiti ya rais wa Jamhuri ya Kenya. Si hapo ni sawa? Wangapi wanasema Kasongo ni mpaka aende nyumbani? Arambe!
Emmanuel To, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
Murder suspects Rose Mbithe and her son Chris Mulwa now claim they're being framed in the murder of Dr. Victoria Mutiso by people who are allegedly after their property, including the disputed 20-acre parcel of land in Mlolongo worth 1.5 billion shillings. The two, who addressed a magistrate's court in Milimani, expressed their frustration with the state, claiming they have been denied access to their accounts and the opportunity to tell their side of the story. Rose told the court the late Dr. Mutiso worked in her office before she divorced her former husband, Professor David Ndete, who later married the late psychiatrist. Gatete Njoroge reports.
Appearing before Milimani Senior Principal Magistrate Geoffrey Onsarigo for the closure of a miscellaneous application after completion of murder investigations, Rose Mbithe and her son Chris Mulwa poured their heart out after over 3 weeks in police custody.
And they have locked us in so that when we are in with my daughter and my son, because we are the ones who are ahead, they can sell our properties which we were married for 25 years with a professor. Nikamsomesha PhD ni mimi nilimlipia. Alikuwa second year medical student.
Confirming she knew the late Dr. Victoria Mutiso, who was gunned down on July 29th in a mission that she allegedly financed, Rose claims she worked in an office they shared with her former husband, Professor David Ndete, before they divorced in 1996.
That woman they are talking about, she was my cleaner in her office. Alikuwa hata na diploma. Akasomeshwa nikitoka hapo.
Claiming innocence, the suspect attributes her tribulations to her political ambitions.
I'm a victim of circumstances. I've not killed anybody and I've done nothing.
The same state that we are the ones who pulled the trigger. Yet they apprehended the ones who pulled the trigger. They're giving contradictory reports.
Allegations the prosecution side and the court say will be part of the proceedings in the murder trial at the High Court. Meanwhile, Rose Mbithe, her children Chris Mulwa and Angela Mulwa, who appeared in High Court after the closure of the miscellaneous application, were not charged formally. The court directed plea taking to be on Thursday.
We'll need to take their statements. And thereafter, we need to book now for the mental, which normally takes 2 days. So it is not possible, as of Thursday, the mental assessment to have been done.
You know, they are requesting they be together at Kileleshwa Police Station. They can give moral support to each other.
The three will now appear in court on Thursday for directions. Gatete Njoroge, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
All right, so we're set for our first commercial break here on the program tonight, but plenty to come, including on Power Talk tonight. Batesh Shah, who is the CEO of SBM Bank Kenya, tells us about SBM Bank Kenya's story here in the country, from its origins in Mauritius, how did they make their way to Kenya, and what lies ahead for SBM and its future in the country, and of course, talking about regional trade and the role banks, particularly SBM Bank, can play in fostering that, not just here in Kenya, but in the region and on the continent as well. So that's an interesting conversation that's coming up on Power Talk, but also later on, we'll be talking about that 16.1 billion shillings loss at KQ. How are they navigating the headwinds? The chair of Kenya Airways, Kiprono Kitonyi, will be here right after that. So we've got plenty to come on The Explainer. Please do stay with us. On Power Talk tonight, CEO Batesh Shah speaks about SBM Bank's transformation and how banks can unlock growth for SMEs.
Steal the show with versatile, Oriental and Elegantile steel roofing tiles, backed by a genuine warranty only from Mabati Rolling Mills. Visit our dealership or call us today at 0788 202020.
Naitwa Peter Buralo. Kazi ninayofanya ni ya ukulima maeneo ya Butere, Kakamega County. Niko na furaha kwa sababu ni mambo ya Mungu na nimefurahia sana. Nilistake na 100, nikapeperusha ndege yangu ikahit the highest multiplier, bahati yangu ikanikujia sasa. Hii milioni moja nitaenda kuongeza kulima wangu wa kuku, niziweke kwa geji nilikuwa nimeweka kwa deep liter kisonga mbele. Nimejishindia milioni moja leo na nimeamini shabiki ina give.
Shabiki ina give. Makaribishwa.
The family business isn't just a job, it's a generational calling. In 1974, my grandfather and uncles opened a supermarket in Nakuru. 50 years later, we are still here. When we started distribution, our first truck left empty, and so was my hope. But one order changed everything. I see my team as family, and when we made bold moves, Stanbic stood with us. From humble beginnings to a national network. When possibility becomes purpose, more is always within reach.
Sisi ni kukonda na kuhurika. Wao ni kunona na pesa mfukoni. Kuja tukaone ukulima. Ziko kilo 2 na zinauzwa leo. Angalia hata ng'ombe inatoa lita 35. Tutoe mguu kwa gunia.
Lazima tutoe mguu kwa gunia.
Ona mayai na kuku. Ona vifaranga.
Si mtuchanue tafadhali.
Ukitaka kubobea katika ukulima na pesa ingie mfukoni, tumia Joymax Feeds kwa kuku, ng'ombe, nguruwe na mifugo wengine wengi. Joymax Feeds kutoka Kavagara.
Kuna kaniendelea kati yangu mimi na Asha.
Usijali, si lazima ushinde umeji-explain sana. Sawa? Na kuamini.
It turns out that my mom already found out that Valentina is Fedra's daughter.
What?
Pablo!
Kulipa school fees ni fast, rahisi na stress-free. So, whether when ni mzazi ama una run shule, KCB inapunguza pressure and keeps things moving. KCB, for people, for better.
Lipa any pay bill na Airtel Money. Na upate 50% transaction fee as cash in your cashback wallet. Sini mimi na kushow.
Some kids are just a step ahead. The winning difference? A spoonful of Blue Band. The only one with the right levels of omega-3 and 6. Blue Band, a spoonful of difference.
Some days I'm up, some days I'm down. It feels like weight up on my shoulders. But even though the road that I'm on is long, I know this for sure. Nothing's gonna keep me from dreaming more.
Congratulations. Your biashara loan has been approved.
I keep going, yeah. I keep going, yeah. I keep going, yeah.
Wateja huprefer stock zangu juu ziko tayari kuvaliwa pap lakini vile hii ekonomi imetufinya, ilinibidi kubadilisha sabuni nikatumia ingine rahisi. Bala, ilibidi nioshe kila kitu mara mbili. Sikuwa na otherwise, nikarudia Ariel. Mi hupata clean and fresh results kwa mwosho mmoja tu. Ariel ndio siri yangu. Sasa story yangu iko popular sana.
Ariel, usafi bora kwa mwosho mmoja tu.
All right, on Power Talk this week, we are speaking with the CEO of SBM Bank Kenya, Bhatesh Shah. There's lots to talk about with the company, the turnaround, its history in Mauritius and its journey to Kenya, and of course, what lies ahead. Bhatesh, thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you for having me, Yvonne.
So let's talk about, SBM and the story in Kenya and, of course, its roots in Mauritius. How does SBM find its way to Kenya?
Sure. So let me start off with what SBM stands for, State Bank of Mauritius. We only have one shareholder, which is listed on the Mauritian Stock Exchange, and our largest shareholder is the government of Mauritius. So basically you're dealing with the government of Mauritius as well. So SBM got established in 1973, 5 years after Mauritius attained independence. And the whole aim was to help transform the economy, which was purely dependent on sugarcane at that time, into a modern economy. And that's how SBM came about. As Mauritius prospered, so did SBM as well. And then it spread its wings. It went into India. It's the second bank in India to get a local license. We're in Madagascar as well. Then it decided to come to Kenya. But this was in 2017, and Central Bank wasn't giving out any new licenses. So you had to come in and buy a bank. So the first bank that SBM bought was Fidelity Bank. That's how it came into Kenya. Yeah. Which was under CBK administration. And then in 2018, it bought certain assets and liabilities of Chase Bank, which was in receivership at that time. A technical word, but what does it mean? If you can imagine a business that has gone bankrupt and you're selling bits of the business to gather cash to pay your creditors. So we bought certain assets, think of it, bits of shamba to pay off people that you owe money to. Yeah. And in that process, we took over roughly about 70% of the assets, which enabled us to pay 53 billion shillings to depositors. Had we not come in, depositors would probably have lost that money as well on that. So we've been here since then, and we just announced our half-year results, 171% up, but underpinned by real growth. I mean, our deposits were up 23%, our loans have been up by 14% as well. So it's gathering a lot of traction as well. Yeah. So that's the history of how SBM came in.
Yeah, and you talked about coming from Mauritius, a country largely, at the time, largely dependent on sugarcane. Before we get back to SBM Bank in Kenya, let's just focus on Mauritius itself. Yeah. Starting off as a small, vulnerable economy, and then now one of Africa's most respected financial centers. What are your thoughts around the ingredients that brought it there, and what we might pick up from that?
Sure. I mean, look, Mauritius got independence in 1968, and it was a monocrop economy. Everything went around sugarcane, right? In fact, there was a Nobel laureate at that time which expected and actually said Mauritius is going to fail. It has got nothing that's going to make it survive or thrive as well. But they did a couple of things right? They had a long-term vision, they planned systematically, and they built institutions that were consistent and that could be trusted as well. And over the next 2 decades, they transformed themselves from a monocrop economy into a very diversified economy based on financial services and other services as well. So it's that consistency, the dependability, and the faith and trust that outsiders would have in its institutions that enabled it to grow.
Where do you think Kenya could, look at that? We're having a big conversation at the moment as to what the future of the country would look like in the next few decades. Anything?
It's the predictability. I mean, if you think about it, if you're an investor from within or outside of Kenya and you're investing in Kenya, you're looking at the longer term. You're looking at 5 to 7 years at the minimum, right? So you got to look at, if I'm putting my money in, how predictable is judicial system? How predictable is a tax policy, right? And if you have confidence that it's going to be predictable and you could base your business plan on that, then that gives you a lot of confidence. Because Kenya has a lot going for it. We have a young, educated workforce. We're very entrepreneurial. We have great weather. But we have that entrepreneurial spirit that is very unique in Africa, if not across the world as well. But as long as we have that stability and predictability, I think we have all the ingredients there. We just need that stability and predictability.
All right, let's come back and talk about the bank now.
Yes.
It's usually about transformation, but perhaps SBM Bank has seen that quite a bit, bouncing back to profitability in 2025. Could you talk to us about some of the strategic shifts that you put in place since taking the helm, and what you think has had the greatest impact on SBM's journey in the country so far?
Sure. So look, I took over roughly about 2.5 years ago. When I took over, we were making a loss of 300 million a month. In 2024, we made a loss of 1.6 billion shillings. Last year was profitable at 614 million shillings, and we just announced a half-year profit, which is up 170% as well. I think the biggest ingredient is culture change. It all starts and ends with people as well, right? So it's making sure that you have the right people in the right positions as well, with the right skill set as well, and then the transformation started from there. So how we operate, the culture shift, and obviously all the technical stuff. We changed all of our systems. We have all the latest systems. But our philosophy is based on customer centricity. I can arguably say that we make the fastest decisions of any bank in the country, and we're very flexible as well. So that endears ourselves to our target market as well. And that's helped our journey, but it starts and ends with people.
One of the other things is about, digital transformation and how everybody is moving away from physical branches towards doing, all of their banking online on their phones and their laptops. But you're still on an expansion drive. Could you talk to us about what that is and how you're able to balance that, and perhaps what role that plays in the growth strategy for the bank?
Sure. I mean, look, let's look at ourselves as Kenya. Because of M-Pesa, we're used to storing and transacting money with our mobile phones as well. So we're digitally native as well. So to be honest, every bank, including ourselves, is catching up to where the customer is, where the country is as such. So digital is already a big thing. It's already embedded, and you have to follow that through, and which we're doing as well. But the physical branches, and we just opened our 34th branch in the country in Nanyuki just last week, right? So our strategy is to open branches selectively, particularly in pockets of the country where our target customer base is, but where we're not present as well. I mean, as an example, by the end of the year, we'll be opening 2 more branches within Nairobi as well. So it's a targeted expansion strategy in terms of branches rather than a mass rollout of branch networks as well. But it's underpinned by digital technology as well. We've invested heavily in digital. In the beginning of June, we upgraded our core banking system to be the latest in the world, to be honest, on that. And our systems are very, very stable right now and dependable. And they're poised for growth.
And when you talk about that, credibility is also one of those issues that you have to balance as you move out into digitalization. There's fintech, and with the rate at which it's growing, there's also the human element that is maybe decreased in that process. So how do you balance this growth and investment, in digital and online banking with credibility?
So the first thing is you got to make sure that your digital channels are easy to use, but also very secure as well. So we've invested a lot in cybersecurity as well. So it gives customers the confidence that they can use their digital channels without any frauds or anything funny happening there as well. But like I said as well, our edge is on our flexibility and our time to decision making, right? So customers always have access to a human being, and that is what we will maintain always, even as we go into digital, but we'll always maintain that because that is our competitive advantage in this market as such.
Yeah.
So it's a balance between the two, but it's a big investment in cybersecurity and the availability of your channels, but at the same time on the human side as well.
Yeah, an important balance because, you know, we hear reports about cybersecurity attacks, most of which, either originate or attacks are in Africa, on the continent. And so you're talking about cybersecurity, which is very important for your systems. Yeah. So if we take a look at SBM Bank in the next, your 34th branch, where do you think it'll go 5 years, 10 years from now? What are your thoughts around that? And perhaps also the role that it'll continue to play in regional trade. That's what we're all talking about. Not just, in East Africa, but, continental trade as well, even taking a look at your blueprint around the world.
Sure. So if you look at SBM's history in Mauritius in particular, right, it was a catalyst for the growth of Mauritius. And I'm confident that SBM Kenya will be the catalyst of further growth in Kenya. We're growing quite nicely, but I think the next few years we'll be able to catalyze that even more by helping MSMEs, farmers, and manufacturers as well. But where we also come in addition to that, is the expertise that we bring in from Mauritius. Mauritius is literally a gateway not just to Africa, but to the world as well, right? And we want to use that connections to enable trade within Africa and within the Indian subcontinent as well, connecting buyers and sellers on both markets for the benefit of both parties as well. So the expertise that we've built up in Mauritius around capital markets, around wealth management, is what we're going to expand across Kenya as well.
Yeah, and you see, Kenya taking on that growth path as well, for the economy and lessons to learn from Mauritius?
Yeah, I mean, look, like I said, I think Kenya has all the ingredients that Mauritius did and more. A young population, educated, English-speaking as well, entrepreneurial nature as well. We have all the ingredients. We just need to make sure that the environment is stable and predictable for a takeoff on that. And I have no doubt, given Kenya's resilience and Kenya's spirit, that we'll get to that takeoff very easily.
Indeed. Congratulations on the work at SBM Bank. What a journey it has been.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the time.
We'll keep watch as to the future for SBM Bank here in Kenya and, of course, around the world, in Mauritius, in India and Madagascar. Thank you very much. SBM Bank Kenya CEO Batesha on Power Talk this week, talking about the growth journey in the country, the turnaround, the strategy, and of course the role it hopes to play in taking Kenya perhaps on a similar path as Mauritius towards being a more prosperous economy. Thank you very much for being with us on Power Talk.
Thank you, Yvonne. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Coming up in business, Kenya Airways posts a 16.1 billion shillings loss in the first half of 2026, widening the losses even further from last year.
Steal the show with Versatile, Oriental and Elegantile steel roofing tiles. Backed by a genuine warranty only from Mabati Rolling Mills. Visit our dealership or call us today at 0788 202020.
I'm so excited. Leo tuna celebrate amani.
Hey girls! I hope mko ready.
Mimi niko ready kabisa, but na feel a bit tired.
Come on girl, trust me, this time round tuko sorted. Nishabook Wigo na nime add stop, so msipanic. Nitawapika doorstep. Wow, umefika haraka.
Cheers!
Dere, thank you so much. Have a good day.
When it matters, we go. Download the WeGo right app now on App Store or Play Store. Powered by Citizen.
Wateja huprefer stock zangu. Juu ziko tayari kuvaliwa pap. Lakini vile hii ekonomi imetufinya, ilinibidi kubadilisha sabuni nikatumia ingine rahisi. Bala, ilibidi nioshe kila kitu mara mbili. Sikuwa na otherwise, nikarudia Ariel. Mi hupata clean and fresh results kwa mosho mmoja tu. Ariel ndio siri yangu. Sasa story yangu iko popular sana.
Ariel, usafi bora kwa mosho mmoja tu.
Heha movement, heha. Wahio heha movement. Ndio unaona bado wase bado wanatudungia. Ndio hivyo. Heha wahio. Kuja utuhamishe. Wahio. Tunataka utuwekee net internet. Wahio. Tudisainie logo. Wahio.
Watch this story and more. Download the Citizen Digital app or visit www.citizendigital.com and find the Citizen Originals portal.
Kenya's #1 app, Citizen Digital.
Completed Form 4 and wondering what next? Enroll at Jordan College of Technology, Thika, the trusted home of industry-driven training. Choose from medical, engineering, ICT, journalism, business, catering, hair and beauty, fashion and interior design, tourism, driving and plant operator courses. Learn from experienced trainers in a modern learning environment designed to prepare you for employment and entrepreneurship. September intake is ongoing. Visit us at Jordan Towers, Thika Town. Jordan College of Technology, the best technical and medical institution in Kenya.
Deals kibao kila wiki na Carrefour.
Enjoy Pembe Home Baking Flour 2 kg at 134 shillings. Assorted Sunlight 3.5 kg at 945 shillings. Nivea Fridge 93 liters at 16,995 shillings. And Meka Coca at 48,495 shillings.
Deals kibao kila wiki na Carrefour.
From the grandest stage, the badges change, but the passion remains.
It's a special goal. Cometh the hour, cometh the man.
This football is from the heavens.
What a story this is.
10 months of drama lie ahead. The stage is set.
The best football on the best football package. It's on DSTV Compact. Dial star 43 hash to reconnect today.
Welcome to the realm where dreams take flight, where imagination soars on wings of innovation, where creativity and business intertwine. Join our vibrant family with mentors who fuel your creative fires. It's more than just a school. It's an immersive experience that shapes hearts, minds, and spirit. We equip you with the tools to choose. Ignite your flame. NIBS Technical College. Developing character skills and competence.
When I have back pain, I reach for 2 tablets of Panadol Extra. With unique Optizop technology, Panadol Extra provides 3 times more pain-relieving power than standard paracetamol for fast relief from strong pain like headache, toothache, and muscle pain, and can get to work in 10 minutes so that I am ready to be there for those who need me. Stronger pain relief at only 20 shillings per pair.
Every day something important is happening somewhere in Kenya. From church services that bring people together to concerts that keep us entertained. From leaders addressing the nation to political rallies across the country.
Ni maendeleo ndio itabadilisha maisha yenu.
Fika kwa Pope akuombee upunguze uongo. Tunaingia State House na Matembe.
Be there wherever the story unfolds.
Wewe nani?
Hii utaionea Viusasa.
That is not negotiable.
Download Viusasa today and start watching for free.
Dial *811*343# to get Amazing Grace as your skiza tune.
Kuna kaniendelea kati yangu mimi na Asha.
Usijali, si lazima ushinde umeji-explain sana. Sawa? Na kuamini.
It turns out that my mom already found out that Valentina is Fedra's daughter.
What? Pablo?
Kulipa school fees ni fast, rahisi na stress-free. So, whether wewe ni mzazi ama una run shule, KCB inapunguza pressure and keeps things moving. KCB, for people, for better.
Welcome back. Now, the Kenya National Union of Nurses has accused the Council of Governors of doublespeak. The nurses say despite their willingness to engage in discussion, county bosses have not demonstrated any goodwill to resolve the standoff that has paralyzed health services. Speaking during their weekly demonstrations from the Green Park terminus to the Council of Governors offices in Westlands, the nurses accused the counties of failing to honour their return-to-work formula, as well as refusing to adopt career progression guidelines. The health workers, whose nationwide strike has entered its 29th day, say they will not resume work until the Council of Governors fulfills their demands.
We cannot have a nurse who is working in Turkana being treated with impunity, or rather differently from a nurse working in Nairobi. Those people having been in class and having same qualification should be treated equally. And that is why we are saying that we do not have a career guideline that recognizes the nurses who have specialized.
For us to go back to work, we have our minimum things that must be done. Our CBA is not negotiable. Our CBA must be signed, implemented, and by the time you are going back, we need a letter of no objection from the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, that is SLC. So those are the things that will make us go back to work.
General duty officers under the Kenya Police Service will from next week don the new look police uniform. Inspector General of Police Douglas Kanja says the National Police Service will implement recommendations arising from a 2023 police public participation exercise that saw police officers reject the current navy blue outfit. President William Ruto will unveil the new look uniform during police recruits pass-out parade on Friday. Here's Kamau Mwangi.
3 years after police officers made recommendations on the uniform they most prefer to operate in, Kenyans will, as from Monday next week, get a glimpse of the attire general duty police officers serving them will don as the National Police Service embarks on phasing out the current navy blue uniform. The new look uniform will be unveiled by the head of state during the Kiganjo Police Training College pass-out on Friday. Inspector General of Police Douglas Kanja says the uniform to be first worn by the graduating officers is meant to conform with the needs of his servicemen and women.
We have been using the blue, the deep blue, and so that we are just reverting back to the one that was agreed upon. And I must note that on Monday I will also be in that one.
While their counterparts in the administration wing and the General Service Unit maintain their current uniforms, Kanja intimated that the new look attire will gradually be reintroduced to all general duty officers to improve morale and subsequently service delivery.
In the next few coming weeks, we should be seeing the new uniform that was approved some times back. And I think this is also going to be a force multiplier.
He was speaking when he assessed preparations for the passing out parade for the more than 6,000 police constables who have completed their training at the institution, where he warned the new recruits against engaging in criminal acts and doing the bidding of individuals at a time the country is headed towards the general election. Kamau Mwangi, Citizen TV, Kiganjo in Nyeri.
Former Cabinet Minister and Chairman of Dari Limited, Raphael Tuju, has warned potential buyers interested in Dari properties to be cautious, as the ownership of the properties is still being contested in court. Tuju denounced an alleged auction of 27 acres of prime Karen land and the other 7 acres on Gong Road, insisting the auction was a sham, citing outdated valuations. Tuju claims that Dari deposited 50 million shillings as directed by the court to stop interference with the properties until the matter is heard and determined. Tuju, who stormed the auctioneers in Westlands, Nairobi, asked those interested in the property to ignore the auction to avoid being embroiled in a court battle. There are 3 active court cases over the properties.
Announcement that I put on the newspapers today. I just feel so sad that I have to do that, because how many people have got a capacity to buy a full page in a newspaper to say their truth? And I suspect that some of the people who may have wanted to come when they saw the buyer beware, announcement, they must have developed cold feet or started asking questions. But how many Kenyans can do that? So there are many, many Kenyans suffering.
All right, let's talk business. Tonight, the national carrier Kenya Airways has sunk deeper into losses, with the airline posting a 16.1 billion shillings loss in the first half of the year. According to the airline's management, the loss was as a result of high fuel costs, which surged 66% as a result of geopolitical tensions and conflict in the Middle East. The ongoing global supply chain further constrained the airline's performance, with delays in component availability. Factors that the airline now says exerted sustained pressure on their margins. Here is Jimmy Mbogo with more on the airline's performance for the first half of the year.
The first half of the year has rocked the national carrier Kenya Airways, with the airline diving further into losses at the end of June 2026. The airline posted a 16.1 billion shillings net loss, an increase from the 12.2 billion shillings loss recorded in the first half of 2025. On the operation front, the airline recorded an operating loss of 10.6 billion shillings, up from the 6.2 billion shillings operating loss recorded in the previous year. In the same period under review, the airline saw its asset depreciate from 183 billion shillings in the first half of 2025 to 180 billion shillings in the first half of 2026. The airline blames this performance on geopolitics, high fuel costs and declined capacity.
Collectively, these factors exerted sustained pressure on margins and the overall network profitability. Consequently, total operating costs during the period increased by 14%. Based on the above revenue and the cost dynamics, the group reported a loss of Kenya shillings 16.1 billion compared to a loss of 12.2 billion reported for the prior period.
Our load factor remained resilient, where capacity was available. And the decline in passenger number broadly tracked the capacity we lost. So what we have experienced in largely unserved demand, not an absence of demand, but again, we are not presenting the external environment as an excuse.
At the same time, the airline continued to contend with an over-leveraged balance sheet, with the management hinting at continued support from government to enable the airline to facilitate trade in the country, further growing the airline's debt owed to the government. The airline is now considering a conversion of its debt to equity to lessen the burden.
We have been able to secure financial support from our shareholders, and our principal shareholder, as you know, is the government of Kenya, and we've received good support from them, and it is agreed that the importance of the airline is an imperative for Kenya.
Our current debt portfolio is around 152 billion or thereabout. 90% of that debt is with the government of Kenya, our biggest shareholder.
In the same period under review, Kenya Airways saw some positives, with revenue increasing by 9% to 81.3 billion shillings, up from 74.5 billion shillings recorded previously, and the second highest to be recorded over the last 7 years. Cargo revenue, on the other hand, posted an 18% growth to close the half year at 8.8 billion shillings, up from 7.5 billion shillings previously. Cabin factor points were up 3.9 points to close the half year at 76.3%. Despite Kenya Airways posting a 9% growth in revenue to 81 billion shillings, 29 billion shillings went to the cost of fuel, continuing to cost the airline its profitability. But the airline remains optimistic that in the near future, things will turn around. Jimmy Mbogo, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
All right, let's talk a little bit more about the situation with Kenya Airways. The chairman of Kenya Airways, Kiprono Kitonyo, joins me now. Thank you so much, Chairman, for being here with us.
Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you for having me.
Thanks. Let's start by talking about the debt status. 152 billion shillings. There's talk of restructuring that into equity. What are the plans around restructuring this debt, and are there any timelines you can give us?
Yvonne, you know, I've been my board and I have been in office since March the 6th of this year, and the results today are not what we would have liked them to be. And of course, we got into an organization with a lot of legacy challenges. We are very confident that the path ahead is positive, and we obviously have the debt situation that you just alluded to, and the plan is very clear. We do have a turnaround strategy, and we have strategic imperatives that we are already working on. The first of those strategic imperatives is to clean up our balance sheet with the support of our shareholder. We are rolling out an investment memorandum done by KPMG to global investors. And despite the headwinds that we are facing, we have investors from all over the globe, from the United States, from China, from South Africa, from Singapore, who would like to invest in Kenya Airways. But however, we would like to run a transparent process because we are listed and we operate on the highest standards of disclosure. And we start the process very soon, and we are confident that we shall achieve both a capital raise partner and a strategic partner from the aviation industry. So the conversion of the debt, the principal debts that we are owing today are to the government of Kenya, who is our largest shareholder, as well as to the lenders consortium of the Kenyan local banks. And both of these are going to be convertible to equity and also redeemable in the event that we do achieve the target of getting a strategic partner. Okay. Having a national carrier is a strategic imperative to Kenya, and it's an important part of our national transport infrastructure. Yeah.
When we take a look, and we'll come back and talk about the search for a strategic investor in a moment. But, you know, when you look ahead towards, you know, the second half of the year, yes. We saw the acting CFO talk about CapEx spending of about $162 million, which is close to 21 billion shillings that you plan to spend yes. In the second half of the year. That's a lot of money, Chairman. Where do you intend to get this money, considering the state of your balance sheet that's already over-leveraged?
You know, I come from different parts of industry. I'm in farming, I come from technology, I've been in the NSC, but I can tell you that in aviation is an extremely capital-intensive industry. The money that you talk about is actually a very small amount of money in the broader scheme of things. If you look at the turnover of the aviation industry, it is very significant. You noticed recently one of our neighboring countries announced a $1 billion investment in fleet. $1 billion, to put it into perspective, would acquire you 3 brand new wide-body aircraft, only 3. And the lead time to acquire those aircraft is 5 to 7 years. So the bulk of the funds that our CFO talked about today will be for the acquisition of engines and spare parts in order to uplift the fleet that we have today. As I'm talking to you, we have 34 aircraft, of which 6 are grounded because of lack of spare parts. Global geopolitical challenges have led to supply chain delays, have led to challenges in the acquisition of these parts, and we are confident that when we do make the investment in the next couple of months, we will see our operational resilience increase, and we'll have far less disappointed customers, because right now we are really operating at the brink. And it's not all doom and gloom, Yvonne. We've got 9% turnover increase. We've achieved the second highest turnover in the history of Kenya Airways at 81 billion. We've achieved a 9% lower capacity. We've flown fewer people and we've flown less cargo, but our turnover is up by 9%. Our load factor in the aircraft, the cabin load factor is 4% up. So it's not all doom and gloom, and the demand side is strong, and the resilience is improving. And one of the things that I learned when I took on the task is that Kenya has got the largest complement of trained aviation staff in Africa, perhaps outside of Ethiopia. And it's a huge strategic advantage for Kenya. And the airline does a lot more than just ferry people. It is very useful as a link, speaking to the fact that Kenya intends to become a logistical hub for the region. And recently you saw that we also ferried our own policemen from Haiti. When we had a challenge in the Gulf, the national carrier was also able to transport Kenyans from Dubai. So it plays a much wider role to the broader society than just being a carrier of choice for many of us like myself.
Right. So you talked about, of the 34 aircraft, you've got 6 are grounded.
Yes.
Yet we had Mary Mwenga, the CFO, talking about the possibility of new aircraft.
Yes, indeed.
Explain that so beyond the big numbers, there's Kenyans who are saying, well, you have 6 grounded aircraft.
Yes.
You complain that's the reason your capacity isn't where it should be, but yet you want to buy more aircraft?
First and foremost, like I mentioned at the beginning, Yvonne, the fact that we are going to be able to restructure our balance sheet is going to create an opportunity for us to have a significant capital raise. Like I also said, there's a huge appetite by global investors to put their money in Kenya Airways. It is also a strategic imperative that Kenya does not lose a significant equity control of the carrier in order for us not to lose the national carrier status. It is equally imperative that we stay as a listed company, because staying as a listed company means that we will have the best governance, and it means that we are upheld to the highest standards of public disclosure. And hence the reason why we open our books to the public today, in order for people to know exactly the challenges that we are facing. The geopolitical environment has led to a 66% rise in petroleum fuel prices. We were buying aviation fuel at a cost of $73 a year ago. It is now upwards of $140. So if you average it out over the year, it's a 66% increase. We are also regulated by IATA, and the carry-through in terms of coupon value on tickets to the passengers can only be done to a certain percentage, and certainly not to the rate at which we've had an increase in the fuel. Today, fuel cost is actually 53% of our total expenditure, which has not been the case in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've talked about a huge appetite for, investors. But yet, Chairman, it has taken over 10 years to identify a strategic investor. This is a story we've heard for years. There's a search for a strategic investor. We're almost there. At some point, there was talk of South African Airways and that special purpose vehicle that was supposed to be put together. So talk to us about this huge appetite, but a 10-year search for this strategic investor.
Okay, because of business continuity and the fact that I took over only 6 months ago, I can only speak for the duration of time that my board and I have been at the helm of this institution. We are running a process. We have a teaser of investment memorandum that will be released later this week or early next week. It'll be in the public domain. You will have it here at Citizen. And, the factors that actually, speak to investor appetite are the strong demand that we see, the huge opportunity for point-to-point, aviation transfer in the continent of Africa, capacity being restored in our airline, the reduction of costs. We are working on reduction of costs, because even if you analyze our profit and loss statement, there is a need for us to really redress some of our costs, and also being able to create a sustainable path to long-term profitability. At the moment, the aviation industry globally is in a flux due to factors that are largely beyond our control. Some airlines, like Delta in the United States, own refineries. And when they made the strategic decision many years ago, there was a big debate about whether they had made the right decision, because, obviously in commerce, people want to focus on core business. But today, in the fullness of time, it looks like their decision has been mitigated by the investment that they made at that point in time. So we as an airline are very strategically positioned. We have a very strong people culture. We have a good product. We are geographically very well positioned. And our MRO capability, Yvonne, I mean, nobody has ever talked about it. Our maintenance capability, the technical teams that we have who maintain our aircrafts on a safety-first principle are amongst the best. Only this year we had a 787 that did a D-check. A D-check is when you actually strip down an aircraft to its bone and rebuild it from scratch. And Boeing Corporation actually commended Kenya Airways for being able to achieve that. And I think we are the first company in the continent of Africa to achieve that level of technical expertise in maintenance. So there are many factors going for us.
Yeah.
And I think the most important, crucial thing is that we navigate this treacherous season that we are in. And the beauty that we have is that the support of the shareholders and investors.
Okay.
Yeah.
As we close, I want to ask you this, because at the start of this conversation, you said, Kenya Airways continues to be strategic for the country and strategic for the economy.
Yes.
Chairman, how strategic is it when, Kenyans look at the state of KQ today?
Yes, yes.
The bailouts by the government are taxpayer funded.
Yes.
You have losses that continue to widen. You've got a capacity that is not at its optimum. Even at an experiential level, you've got consumers who complain about delays in flights. Why should Kenyans think this is strategic? Indeed, the National Assembly has also been, had some concerns about the bailout by the government. For those Kenyans who don't see this as strategic, considering everything, even the results today, why should we continue to do this when many of them can still take other flights that connect them to wider destinations across the world on time, giving better in-flight service, amongst others? Why is KQ strategic, considering everything it's been through over the last few decades?
The Gulf nations today who are leading in global aviation, arguably they could be the leaders of global aviation today. A city-state like Dubai actually built its resilience and commercial prowess on the back of aviation. The contribution of aviation in those states went from where we are today, about 3%, to 27% of GDP today. And the connectivity that it has created, the traffic it has created, the opportunities for trade. So Kenya Airways, like other national carriers, are facilitators of trade. They're connectors to people. They open up our country to the huge tourism potential that we have. And they facilitate connectivity to our own diasporas, who are, as you know, the #1 foreign exchange earners.
But can you say that about KQ today?
Our agricultural exports are facilitated through our cargo. Today, Kenya Airways only controls 11% of cargo, aviation cargo in Kenya. And we would like to raise that 4 times to 40% plus. And that's a huge commercial opportunity. If you drill down on our figures, cargo makes a profit. What we are lacking today is the equipment to facilitate more transportation aviation transportation through Kenya Airways. And we are seeking partnerships, we are seeking investment, we have a plan, we are looking at our cost structure, we are looking at more stable industrial relations with our pilots, with our highly talented workforces. We are looking at better relationships with our lenders, and we are looking at also strengthening the relationship we have with OEMs. And we are working closely with Boeing, with other aircraft manufacturers. And I can tell you with no fear of contradiction, Yvonne, that yes, we are facing turbulent times. The beauty is that we have a plan. We understand where the losses are coming from, and they're being actively addressed by our board and the management team that are working under us. All
right, we'll leave it there for now. We look forward to seeing this strategic investor, elusive for 10 years, but deadline is December 2026.
If you don't see an investment memorandum in the next 30 days, call me here. and take me to task.
Okay,
yes.
We're on.
Yes.
We love that here on The Explainer. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Chairman, Kenya Airways, Kiprono Kitonyi, on the state of Kenya Airways and the plans ahead, the search for a strategic investor. So we will continue to watch what happens with the national carrier. Let's take a look at other news making headlines in the world of business. Kenya has launched its national bioeconomy strategy, setting the stage for greater investment in science, innovation, and value addition to biological resources. The country is seeking over 100 billion shillings in investments in the sector over the next 10 years. The strategy is expected to open up new economic opportunities while supporting sustainable production, job creation, and the transition to a low-carbon economy. Here's Dennis Otieno with that report.
The National Bioeconomy Strategy seeks to transform biological resources, including agricultural biomass, into products and services that generate economic and social value. The approach targets sectors including food systems, sustainable construction, bio-based chemicals, biopharmaceuticals, and biopackaging.
Looking at how we can be able to build capacity and capability, how we can also be able to use our biological resources for the benefit of the society. It's not about creating more biological resources, but adding value to whatever we have.
Kenya is targeting over 100 billion shillings in investments in bioeconomy over the next 10 years.
Let us work together across government, the private sector, civil society, and academia to develop bioeconomy pathways that reflect our local aspirations while contributing to global goals on climate, biodiversity, and food security.
Stakeholders say adding value to agricultural biomass, strengthening supply chains, and enabling local manufacturing can help diversify Africa's economic growth while protecting biodiversity and reducing carbon emissions. Following the launch, Kenya now becomes the fourth African country with a dedicated bioeconomy strategy, joining the likes of Namibia, South Africa, and Ethiopia. Dennis Otieno, Citizen TV, Kiambu.
Now, the government has begun preparations to take 500 small businesses to this year's East African Community MSME Trade Fair in Rwanda as it looks to use the regional showcase to expand markets for locally made products. A multi-sectoral technical committee has been formed to coordinate the country's participation, including selecting and facilitating exhibitors, logistics, and the movement of goods ahead of the November event. All 47 counties will be represented, with at least 5 exhibitors from each county and some participants drawn from the Nyota program. The government says it has allocated 200 million shillings to support the exhibitors. The Ministry of Cooperatives and MSMEs further says that the goal is to increase the use of digital tools by small businesses and ease the movement of Kenyan goods across East African borders.
Usually brings together all the ESC.
As you know, the government of Kenya has prioritized MSME as one of the key sectors of the economy that if it is focused on, then it will change the economy of this country. Why MSME? Because in MSME, we have over 21 million people involved in MSME. We have over 7 million small businesses.
Steal the show with versatile, oriental, and elegantile steel roofing tiles, backed by a genuine warranty only from Mabati Rolling Mills. Visit a dealership or call us today at 0788 202020.
Shabiki inagiu.
Women
prostate and breast cancer screening delivered by experienced specialists with packages personalized to your individual needs starting from just $1,300. Every detail is handled for you. Flights, accommodation, your full screening itinerary. So the only thing you need to focus on is your health. Call or WhatsApp 073-254-254 to talk to View Travel and HPG Medical Assistance today.
Muda umewadia wa The Royal Mabati Mega Sale. Tumia steel trusses, studs and channels kwa ceiling, Decatile kwa roof na garage tufunike na Royal Canopy. Pia tunakuletea box na corrugated profile, brick tile, Eurotile, Roman tile na roofing accessories for your project. Call 0722638383 na uenjoy free delivery kote nchini. Royal Mabati Factory. Roof ni Royal.
Africa. A land of unforgiving extremes, where one beast makes its commanding presence felt. Unfazed by this dramatic vastness, this colossal marvel is the symbol of dominance. It is ready to take on any terrain effortlessly, presenting the UD Trucks Questa, going the extra mile.
The Kenya Water Institute invites applications for September 2026 intake. Join a skilled workforce driving excellence in water, sanitation, and irrigation sectors. Begin your journey at our campuses in Nairobi, Kisumu, Kitui, and Tharaka Nithi. KEWI offers accredited diploma and certificate programs in wastewater and sanitation engineering, as well as artisan courses in plumbing and pipe fitting, water and wastewater management, and water operators course. Kenya Water Institute. Fountain of water knowledge.
Deals kibao kila wiki na Carrefour. Enjoy Pembe Home Baking Flour 2 kg at 134 shillings. Assorted Sunlight 3.5 kg at 945 shillings. Midea Fridge 93 liters at 16,995 shillings. And Mika Coca at 48,495 shillings. Deals kibao kila wiki na Carrefour.
Basic soap keeps my skin dull. Discover a cleansing revolution. New Garnier Vitamin C Serum Cleanser 2-in-1. 1 bottle of serum in a wash. 1. Deeply cleanses. 2. Brightens like a serum in 1 wash. New Vitamin C Serum Cleanser 2-in-1 by Garnier.
Jenga mapema na Heritage Mabati Mills. Pata offer motomoto on box and corrugated profile, brick tile, Eurotile, Roman tile, steel trusses, studs and channels, canopies, Decatile, pamoja na roofing accessories kwa bei nafuu. Tutembelee Ruiru kwa Cairo ama piga simu 0746 667 456. Upate free delivery in just 72 hours. Heritage Mabati Mills. The proof is on the roof.
When I have back pain, I reach for 2 tablets of Panadol Extra. With unique Optizop technology, Panadol Extra provides 3 times more pain-relieving power than standard paracetamol for fast relief from strong pain like headache, toothache, and muscle pain, and can get to work in 10 minutes so that I am ready to be there for those who need me. Stronger pain relief at only 20 shillings per pair.
Skia ni juicy flavor zote tamu tena fruity yummy na flow kama maji juu ni tamu kama sali ni juicy are you bored kuna vitu zinakuudhi usijali my bro ibu kama taka juicy juni.
Over the years, Shabiki imetengeneza millionaires all over the country. Real people, real wins. Na bado, sahi, Shabiki ina give 1 million shillings kila wiki. Ingia shabiki.com ucheze JetX, Aviatrix, Hydroplane or your favorite kandege game. Siri ni kukaza ukiona ndege yako ikipanda. Juu, the highest multiplier ndio inakupa 1 million shillings. ongeza jina lako in the book of millionaires. Shabiki ina give.
Kuna kaniendelea kati yangu mimi na Asha.
Usijali, si lazima ushinde umeji-explain sana. Sawa? Na kuamini.
It turns out that my mom already found out that Valentina is Fedra's daughter.
What? Pablo?
Kulipa school fees ni fast, rahisi na stress-free. So, whether wewe ni mzazi ama una run shule, KCB inapunguza pressure and keeps things moving. KCB, for people, for better.
All right, now the 2026 CAF B Women's African Nations Volleyball Championship started on Tuesday in Nairobi with no major upsets in the matches played across the Kasarani Indoor Gymnasium and the Ulinzi Sports Complex. Hosts Kenya started the tournament with a comfortable 3-0 win over Zambia in the opening match of Group A. Kenya made light work of the visitors, taking the first set 25-14 at the Kasarani Indoor Arena. The second set followed the same script, with the hosts running away 25-9 winners. The third set was routine work, won by Kenya in a quick 25-11. Neighbours Uganda were also set off to a good start with a 3-0 thrashing of Senegal. The Democratic Republic of Congo also won 3-0 against Burundi, as former Africa champions Egypt sent a strong statement with a 3-0 drubbing of Burkina Faso. Rwanda also made light work of Algeria, winning 3-0. The championship is a double-edged sword as teams fight for 2 qualifications, the winners punching a ticket to the Los Angeles Olympic Games and the top 3 teams advancing to the World Championships. Alan Oyende emerged the winner of the 17th edition of the National Scrabble Masters Championships following an impressive performance in the tournament held at Stima Club in Nairobi. Oyende finished top of the standings after registering 14 wins and 6 losses that earned him $4.99 for the title. Bernard Koyoko finished second while Chis Okioma was third. The championship forms part of Kenya's preparations for the 2026 Africa Scrabble Championship, which is scheduled for October in Monrovia, Liberia. Over 20 players turned up for the championship held at the Stima Club, Nairobi. Kenya could have up to 4 wrestlers at the Olympic Games for the first time at the 2028 Los Angeles Games. Calvin Nyatuka and Jemima Nahumicha have already qualified after the 3rd East Africa Regional Development Tournament held in Burundi. 2 other wrestlers, Janet Ingwesi and Dan Kegode, are awaiting confirmation from the United World Wrestling. Kenya had an impressive outing at the competition where they collected 31 medals. That's 18 gold, 10 silver and 3 bronze. Kenya collected majority of the medals indoor wrestling with 12 gold, 5 silver and 1 bronze. Beach wrestling delivered 13 medals, 6 gold, 5 silver, 2 bronze. Kenya took 20 wrestlers to Burundi, 4 of them sponsored by the United World Wrestling. The qualification to Los Angeles by the 2 Kenyan wrestlers underscores the importance of taking part in regional and continental championships as they act as ranking tournaments that earn athletes points towards qualifications for the majors. Team Kenya returned to the country Tuesday afternoon. Barcelona Rising Starlets and Laikipia Youth Soccer Academy, LYSA, defended their county titles after winning the 5th edition of the Chapadimba Laikipia County Finals at Nyahururu Stadium. Barcelona Rising Starlets beat Nanyuki Starlets 1-0 to claim the girls' county title for the 5th consecutive time. LYSA edged Ilpolei Giants 6-5 in post-match penalties after a goalless draw in regular time to retain the boys' title. Other teams that have qualified for the Central Regional Finals scheduled for this weekend include Thriving Queens from Kiambu, Kirinyaga's Kerugoya Sportif, St. Joseph Starlets of Muranga, and Karatina Home Queens from Nyeri. In the boys' category, the qualifiers are LYSA, Kiambu's Masfo, Kiaga Secondary School of Kirinyaga, CDM Emmanuel FC from Muranga, and Nyeri's Giakairo.